change.
No.
Are they doing that one?
Okay, we'll give you the signal, huh?
Well, no, I meant about make sure you don't keep repeating the same thing over and
Right,
over again.
right.
You're telling me they're gonna accept it like this?
Oh, well, we were talking about that.
Is it go? Okay. That's fine.
Okay, the Township of Whitehall regular public meeting of the Board of Commissioners will come to order. After the pledge, we'll have a moment of silence for Stephen Spates, a township resident who passed away recently. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I have a statement I'd like to read concerning Stephen Spates. Mr. Stephen Spates passed away on May 28th. Steve was the building inspector for Whitehall Township starting in the late 1970s for the next 17 years until his retirement from full-time work in 1994. We successfully drafted him back into part-time employment after this for a few more years. Steve was the sole building inspector during the zenith of the 1980s construction boom, when both commercial and residential construction was at a fever pitch here in Whitehall. He inspected all phases of construction, both new as well as additions and alterations, and handled property maintenance issues, frequently assisting the loan zoning and code enforcement officer. He scheduled his own inspections, returned his own phone calls, maintained his own paperwork, and cleaned and fueled his own car. It's kind of rare today, right? He made his home in Whitehall and raised his family here. He truly cared about the township. He was a Navy veteran who always flew the American flag on his desk. He was direct and honest, but compassionate and caring at the same time. He did not shy away from challenging or difficult situations or people. The only people he did not get along with were those who did not care as equally as he did about the township and the construction that was being done. He was proud to have worked for the township and did his part to make sure it was a great place to live, work, and visit. He was a great coworker and well-liked and known for his humor and no-nonsense approach. Steve exemplified everything that is a hard-working American. He will be missed, and the township was so very fortunate to have had him as a representative for the time that they did. And again, I wish that you keep him and his family in your prayers. Whitehall Township has an obligation to affirmatively further fair housing and to review all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. This includes taking meaningful actions that overcome patterns of segregation and foster inclusive communities free from barriers that restrict access to opportunity based on those protected characteristics. The township in its land use decisions does not discriminate against persons based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, disability, or familial status, and reviews all land use applications in accordance with federal civil rights statutes. Public comments made on the basis of bias and stereotype concerning people within these protected classes will not be taken into consideration by the township in its deliberations. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of the regular public meeting of May 13th, 2019.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Clary?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker? Aye. Commissioner Howard? Oh, sorry.
That's all right, I'll
You're
go
the
now.
real guy.
I don't care.
Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
And Commissioner Fryman?
Yes.
And President Howard.
Yes.
Okay, passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, we would like to begin the meeting with a demonstration of Project Lifesaver.
Not those lifesavers.
I gotta move out of the way, I believe. You just, you're okay.
Good evening. If you remember, I don't know how long ago we got a demonstration or a request from Project Lifesaver. We now have the system and we've been trained in it. Two of our officers are instructors. We will be training some of the emergency management and some of the fire department in how to use the equipment. I just wanted a public demonstration so everyone knows what it is, and there are some fallacies out there, what it is not. So basically, this is a radio transmitter bracelet that someone with a medical condition that causes wandering away from home can wear, that we can track this bracelet when their family members report them lost. It is not 24-hour live tracking of somebody. This is not GPS. There's no big screen in the police department where we can watch people wander around on a big map. This is only when someone notifies us that we can turn the equipment on, and then we can start tracking. If people do have someone where they would like a little more monitoring, there are personal trackers that people can get from Project Lifesaver. There are proximity alarms where a parent can wear a receiver on their belt. If the child has the transmitter and wanders a certain distance away from that, the belt will alert the parent the child is too far away, and then they can go looking for them. So there are other options. This is very dependent on people calling us immediately when they know their family members are missing. It does have a limited range. It is not, 10 miles. It's probably on a good day, 1 mile to 1.5 miles, weather dependent, building dependent. Cars block it, buildings block it, trees block it, weather will block it. So when this person has this on and they leave, we get notified. We will go to the station and we will get the equipment. The first thing we do is we have a vehicle mounted antenna. This is not a directional antenna. This will only tell us that the bracelet is somewhere in the range of the antenna, but it will not tell us left, right, up, down, north, or south. So you're going to hear, that's the transmitter. There are settings on here for distance, so as we get closer, you'll hear the beep went down. So as we track the person, we'll turn what's called the gain down, and then we can reestablish it and get closer and closer. So once we know we have a signal, we're going to switch over to what's called a Yagi antenna. And basically this is nothing more than a big wildlife tracker. You've seen it on the Discovery Channel. All right. So again, you're going to hear that beep. As we get closer or further away, or I spin the antenna away, that beep's going to get a lot less. You can't hear it? Basically, that's how we track. So as we get closer and closer to the person, we'll just keep doing what we call arcs, and we will narrow in on that bracelet. When I first went to this class, I thought, is this really the best technology? There's GPS, there's cell phones, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm a convert. There's a reason for that. This will give us up and down. So if you're in the mall, if you're in a multi-story building, GPS is going to get us to that building, but then it's kind of where from there. This will give us up and down. So if you're in that multi-story building, we can go, say it's going to probably be up on the second floor, down in the basement, hopefully. Again, depending on the bottom of the mall with all the pipes, concrete, and everything, the signal's going to be rather reduced. Now, the caregiver who requests the system has to test the system for us. We are not going to go to their house every single day and test the system for them. So there is a little tester for it. This gives out a signal about every second or so, and you'll see a little red light starts flashing. That tells that caregiver that this battery is working and the signal is going out. These batteries are good for about 60 days. The police department or one of the other people who are trained will come out to the home, change the battery for them. The reason we're going to do that is we want to inspect the unit to make sure there's no rust. There is a weatherproof seal in here, so if they're out in rain, or hopefully they don't go into water, but if they do, it'll still transmit at least for a little while till that seal is broken. So we want to inspect it ourselves to make sure it's working. We'll replace the battery to make sure it's a fresh battery and not another used one going in. We're going to take it right out of that package. This is limited to people who have a medical condition. They need to have something, Alzheimer's, autism, or something that basically causes wandering. We have 10 kits. Each one has its own frequency. So we can have up to 10 right now. If we need more, we can get more. And when that person leaves, we program the frequency into the transmitter and we start tracking that individual. That's basically the 5-minute tour. Any questions from anyone?
What is the cost of it?
We got it through a grant. Cost to the caregiver right now is free. We will purchase the batteries. We got a supply from Project Lifesaver. But right now the kits are free. We got them from the grant. Project Lifesaver. Welcome.
So what kind of proof do you need, like, with my son being autistic? So what do I
Do
need?
you have anything from a physician or?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll work with you. We'll get it done. So like I said, it is very dependent on people calling us. It's not live tracking. As soon as you know your loved one's gone, give us a call. If you find him in the meantime, you can always cancel us. But because the person can normally walk about a quarter mile an hour, the longer you wait, the further they're gonna go away, the harder it is for us to track them. Other questions? I'll get out of your hair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna rip the microphone down.
Thank you for that presentation. This is something I think is that we all, when we had this presentation before us about the technology, we want to do something for our residents and be able to track children with autism, anybody that could leave the home and be difficult to find. And unfortunately, we've seen stories in the past where a loved one's lost and we cannot get to them quickly enough. And this is great technology that I think is going to be very helpful here in the township and save lives. So we're very fortunate to have it.
Dennis, if I can just
yes,
note,
sure.
this program was, or a similar program was introduced to us by a local resident who had a son who would wander off because of autism. And she was desperate to find a way to control this and be able to find him. And the police department ran with it when we sat down and talked about it. And Mike and Greg and the entire program was dependent upon their evaluation, and it's turned into something I think is going to be really good.
Okay. We'll move on to courtesy of the floor. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped over. Public safety bidding. This is where we got to move out of the way for the presentation. The floor is yours, sorry.
Thank you so much. We'll get a minute to fire this thing up.
Pull that out, Jay.
Michael? Yep. Go ahead, Michael.
First slide up?
Maybe you want to get us going?
Yeah. The board's priority, as it was stated, was that we wanted to get a public safety building, so we went after this very quickly and gathered the necessary information to allow Dewey and KCBA to come up with a program for us. And one of the most important components, as we're noting up here along the exterior, was safety, because we had travel moving throughout the entire campus, and it created some problems for us. The other thing is just knowing where we were to direct people. Right now, we have 3 accesses into the building, which creates some confusion, and it leads to a real delay in getting people to meet with the people they need to meet with. So with this new program, we're going to find a way to clearly direct the public and private and necessarily secure programs or areas of the building. We were hoping to improve operations, and we know that when you guys come in here, you realize we're spending some time wandering around the building trying to figure out where we need to be and how to get there. and we're trying to improve efficiency. We think what we've developed here, because of the common access point, is going to make it a much more user-friendly experience, and we're going to be able to have people served more effectively and more expeditiously. The way it's designed, as you'll see when it's introduced here, and I know you've seen a piece of this, but we're actively engaged in the design at this point, is going to be much safer. And we also have had a problem with record storage and organization. When we get this place cleaned up finally, and we've gone through all of the files that we have that we can actually get rid of at this point, I think we're going to find it a whole lot easier to work with. This building is going to do this for us for, as we anticipate, another 40 to 50 years, which is why we're thinking that it's the right project at the right time for us.
All right.
You're on.
Well, Jay Clough for KCBA Architects, thank you for having us. With me tonight is Jamie Ober, and we're going to kind of split this presentation up a little bit. We last were in to see everybody on the 14th of November. You said, go for this, let's make it happen. At that point, we had concluded a feasibility study that said, yes, we could make this campus do all the things that Mayor just said. So in the intervening months, we've been working with the staff, we've been working with all the departments, we've been working especially with codes to make sure we're going to honor all the same things that you ask everybody else that builds in your township to do, and we're very pleased with the end result. Just to bring you up to speed very, very quickly, this is a little bit of a history again. We have shown the existing buildings on the campus. We said the ones that are in play to make way for the new police facility and some of our renovations would be the former Public Works building behind here, the fueling station, which is over here, and another support storage building. And every time you turn a corner, there's a pile of something out here. So we said, okay, this is a really good time for us. We want to put a police station here. First of all, public safety building, more than just police. But this would be a really good chance to clean up the whole shoot match for the next 50 years. So we go from that. So what we said was we have the existing township building. We're in it now. And that's going to stay, and that's going to be part of the primary building. It's a well-built building, needs some work. To the bottom side of it here, along by the stream, we will insert a new two-story police facility. 2 stories because the site is very tight. We're able, working closely with the police department, to put administrative functions upstairs and day-to-day kind of functions down on the first floor, and we got everything kind of sorted out so that it works very, very well. And you'll hear about that from Jamie. Mayor was alluding to the fact that right now when you come up here, there's a lot of confusion about where you might want to go during the day to conduct a business. We will be putting in a central transaction area for all the, whether you want to see the police, whether you want to go and pay taxes, whether you need a building permit, whether you need something from Parks and Rec, you'll head to this door. And we want the police to be able to function. They have a lot of activities that are out back, secure vehicles for their personal vehicles, secure vehicles for the police department vehicles. They're out back. So that's the basic building blocks on the site. We'll go from there. So how this thing translates. We introduced a ring road around the complete site. We opened up about 20% of the asphalt that was out there and got rid of it so that we can define that circulation path, do a better job with stormwater. It seems to me every time I'm here it rains. Tonight's another one of those, so you certainly know that. And the ring road allows us to maintain the sewer authority. You'll see a dotted line here. That we gave some thought to how much space their vehicles need to access their garage bays. We have put a 8-foot estate fence around the back. That is where the police vehicles would be, and that is an electronic gate with transponders in the vehicles so that the public, when they deal with the police, are up front. The police functions are in the back, and we set this up as a one-way loop. It's 2-way to the sewer authority, so we can come around. And it's 2-way to Public Works, so we can go around. And basically, the zoning is pretty easy to see on this site. We're saying the Public Works is on this side, the sewer authority is on this side, the police kind of get this chunk, and the township stays where it has been, and we get this transaction area where we can conduct all the neutral business. You'll see a dotted line. We're going to be looking at an alternate for a canopy with a solar canopy that'll do two things for us, if we're able to afford it. If not, it's in the master plan and you'll get it someday. It will protect those vehicles that get used on a shift, things like snow, ice, those things, get them cleaned up. And it will give us some green in that those are solar panels. So that's what that dotted line kind of represents over there. The front, we decided we would leave pretty much alone with some modifications right in this area. You have a beautiful memorial here. We're going to leave the loop as it's going. I think it'll function well. And I think big picture, the piece of public works facility that was back here is replaced by a new one here. And the public works people, like the rest of the township, is going to use this as an opportunity to kind of get rid of some things that probably have overstayed their welcome. Fuel Island is shown here in a very neutral spot. It does fuel all kinds of vehicles, not only police and township, but fire vehicles as well. So again, off that ring road, able to get in and out around it in kind of a neutral spot that's got a lot of room to circulate. In an area where we're maintaining the salt bins to save some money in the project budget. By maintaining those, it gives us a nice circulation area for maneuvering, and it puts the fuel when you're 3 in the morning trying to get those trucks out, the fuel's in a good spot. So we're pretty excited. We think it does everything at your request and our concurrence. We are proposing a wall here to kind of hide what goes on out in the back, as well as a wall over here to we have a big emergency generator. The police will be 100% on emergency power. Every outlet, every light, they will run independently. And there are buried propane tanks here to power that, and that will be an above-ground generator shielded by a masonry wall, and it's back in the corner where it's not going to cause anybody any particular angst when we have to exercise. It's a diesel engine, so we have to exercise it once in a while, but it's in its area. We rearranged the parking here. We maintained pretty much the same amount of parking. We're actually well over the parking count. We did check in with the codes department to make sure that we are placing the same restrictions on ourselves that we did with anybody else. So we meet parking, and to our knowledge right now, we meet all the zoning requirements that would be required on this site. So that's all good news. You'll see a lot more green, a lot more organization. I think it's going to function much more safely, much easier. Our goal would be to turn this into a two-way loop here, so you can go both ways and get a little more flexibility. And again, to accent your memorial. So that gives you the kind of the picture on site plan, and then we move into the building.
So to jump in more detail here, as Jay had mentioned, we united the existing township and then the two-story police block. And the common area of entry that will act as the entry point to both locations.
Excuse me, we can't hear you.
Okay, check up here. All right. So this is just starting blocking out the big picture. Is that better? Okay. Big picture of the existing township with the two-story police and the common circle of entry for both of those functions. We're also designated an employee entrance on the back side of this building. So diving into this real quick here, if you can see my pointer, is the entry vestibule that will act to either the police and the township. And once you get within this secure zone, they'll be at the PSA office. We'll release you, if appropriate, into the common area, and then down into this public meeting room at the end. So this whole yellow zone we see as a semi-secure area, and off of that you also have the fire department. So it's all kind of feeding off of this common area. And once you move past,
We want to point out that meeting room is a meeting room for police, EMS, and fire. That's a training function. We're not going to move you guys over there. That should be cleared up.
okay, yep, cool. And then also that stair, if anyone needs to go up and meet to any of the office spaces on the second floor, it will be available once you're released from that initial secure point. But once you get up onto the second level, everything is locked down at this point that you can't get beyond into any of the office spaces. So just jumping back down to the first floor for a second, once you move beyond this entry door that I'm designating right here, then this whole back part is secure. There's nobody that can get back here. without being escorted or released. The blue is secure, and then this orange part at the backside is the sally port that comes into the cell area. So this is the highest secure zone of this building. The second floor is really office spaces. There's an elevator that can bring people that are coming up to meet with the detectives if necessary. That is back within the middle of the building. And then taking a quick look at this building here and the reorganization, staying within the existing perimeter and reworking the departments in a more clear way of circulating, all coming off of this community transaction area. So you're going to have walk-up windows that go to the admin, to the tax, and to the codes. And it'll be, you'll see in a second here, like sort of the volume that we're trying to create to allow access into these deeper parts of the building. The shaded area here is portions of the building that it's not part of the scope of this project. We won't be touching those areas. And the proposal is also to add the elevator room that I noted in the beginning for the new entrance for the staff. So just taking a quick minute to capture a picture from the outside of the building to remind you, maybe you're looking down when you're running in the rain. This is the existing facade, and as we started to talk about how we mass out this new building with a common area next to the existing building, and then putting the two-story police in to the side of that, we were talking about how do we create a proposal that is going to tie the new building into the existing. So our proposal is to reclad the existing building facade. We're keeping all the existing windows. We're peeling off the arched element at the front of it and infilling that portion of it with some new glazing in kind with what is there already. And looking at a new transaction area, a little bit higher of a space, a bit more glassy to allow the sunlight to really get back into this somewhat of a deep space of that community transaction area, letting the natural light into that and creating like a warm, welcoming, clear entry point. And then the two-story police to the left side. So it's important to create an entry point that is very easily noticed. It's really clear where people need to go to get into the building. And then kind of just like moving around to the side, trying to work at bringing the massing of the new proposal down to the existing one-story building. Like, how do you tie that existing building in and bring it all as one whole design? And lastly, just wanted to leave you with an image of that entry, doing a glass element. It's very clear where you need to go in. You go to the right to the admin area. You go to the left to the police.
Good evening. I'm Arif Fazil with Dewey Engineering, and I'm assuming nobody wants to talk about schedule and budget because you're happy with all the pretty pictures. No, really though, there's three things I think that are critical in the success of this project, and obviously the one is implementing the requirements that will make this a functional, efficient, and very effective facility for you for many years, as was stated by the mayor and the parameters. So that's the criteria. But obviously keeping the project on schedule and on budget is another major component of this. So we're going to focus on the next few slides on the budget, and then we'll talk a little bit about the schedule. I can tell you the team, though, has been very, what's the word I want to use? Maybe the right word is utilitarian. So although there is some presence based on the renderings that Jamie and Jay just showed you, and I also just want to mention before I forget, Kim is the one who keeps us all straight. So Kim is with me also over there on the left. So she's been kind of running the charge on this project. So she's been doing a great job. But what I was going to say is the word that I think we've tried to embrace is utilitarian. If you looked at the floor plan and you looked at the efficiencies of the space, even the transaction counter, so essentially the lobby is a transaction counter. So it's an area where people can gather and wait in line or do their business at the township with a defined entrance. We're using every single space, including the basement area that currently exists. And one of the things that I think you must not underestimate, I think the decision you made to integrate everything on one site is going to pay big dividends because site costs are extensive. And by implementing site costs that not only improve the functions of this campus, but also address the needs of the police building, is a big savings. And in fact, on the site costs alone, we focused very heavily so we could put the money back into the user spaces. And so I think those are kind of three things that you should leave with when you look at the budget, is that it's a utilitarian, the site is very efficient and very well used, and so you're not spending a lot of infrastructure and site costs, and we're focusing everything on the needs of the users. I think those are three things you should leave with. But speaking of which, we started at a very high budget. The board approved the budget at 17.7. Currently, based on our estimates, we're at 17.8, and I'll get to the breakdown of that. And that's not anything to worry about, other than to tell you, we could have easily taken 100,000 from the contingency and put it in there. But at this point, we want to keep everyone accountable. We've got a system-by-system budget, working very well with the architect, their team, and everybody, even from the township. So we want to keep everyone accountable. So right now, that's where we are in the budget. It's early in the project, and we are still carrying that contingency, as noted there, as well as there's still almost close to $1 million in furniture and equipment and technology needs to still develop and think about. So it is a comprehensive budget. If you go through the next slide, here we just kind of broke it down, and I think we'll have a handout for you that's a little more detailed. But it's hard to see on this. However, what I want to point out to you is that, as I said, we're using most of the dollars are going towards the building, as you can see. As Jay noted out, we've even the outbuildings, we've been able to manage that. And then you see the last three line items, which I already talked about, which is the 900,000 for the furniture and about 820,000 for the project contingency. One of the things we've done with this budget, which we told you from day one, is we've included everything that we think is needed to complete the entire project. So this is a project budget, not a construction cost budget only. And that's very important, I think, to know that up front, so you know where you're going. I think one of the things I wanted to also point out on the budget is that we do have, line items for everything from electric service to construction testing, as well as addressing some of the environmental items that are going to need to be addressed, which I'll cover in a minute. So, anything else on the budget I think I need to cover? And then we'll jump to schedule, I think, in a minute, but
Yeah, and what we're doing as,
you have to come up here.
Either
Or
that
just
yeah.
tell me,
The soft costs,
Right.
there are some numbers in there that are still placeholders.
Right.
Because we're working through some of the design issues and how we incorporate environmental issues, furniture issues, things like that. So there are some
Yep.
chunks of money
Yep.
that we're still working with.
But it's a comprehensive budget, as I said. So, do you have any questions on the budget before we go into schedule? I know nobody wants to talk about budgets, but that's all right. I'm good.
My one question.
Yes, sir.
You said the salt domes that we recently built, they're going to remain. We're not going to rebuild those.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That is correct.
That's correct. Yep.
So that's the savings there.
Yep.
We thought they were in good shape, they're in a good location. We used that funds to try to move over and do some other things.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Good point. All right. So who's clicking the? Okay. Thank you. All right. Okay. So the project schedule, as Jay indicated, we started early this year, and we are here June 10th with a report to you as to where we are. We are then going to try to take advantage of the low season for environmental contractors, and we're going to bid some of the environmental work in August so they could do it in the fall, which is their slow time. Summertime is usually busy for them because they're usually in public schools and different places like that, and take advantage of that work, which is again in the budget. And then in August, we're going to come back to you with, actually in September, we're going to come back to you with another update, which is called a design development update. So at that point, we'll have further refinement of the spaces. Jamie and Jay will have worked with the individual users, which we've done a lot of already, but some more details will be developed. We'll have structure and other things developed, and HVAC and electrical on the building. We'll know some more about the utilities, and we're working on some of that stuff in the field right now. So we'll be back to you in September for another update. And as I said, in the fall, we'll be doing September 15th, we'll be doing some of that environmental. And we're also going to try to get that fuel station built separately, because that's a kind of a specialty unit. We're going to try to get that out on the street and put together in advance also. And then in November, we're going to try to release these bid documents for contractors. We think we're going to look at the exact timing of that, and that might run through January. But early in January or so, we'll have bids, and we think that's a perfect time to get very competitive bids up front early in the year, and then come to you in February for the approval of the majority of the big costs, as Jack likes to say. That's where the big money is going to be spent once you direct approval of those bids. So we'll be coming to you in February, and then the goal would be to start in the spring of 2020. As you remember, another efficiency here that is, again, very strategic and is going to pay off dividends is the fact that we can build the police building. We can then shift, come up with a phasing plan to shift some staff temporarily into that new construction before the police chief, so somebody else gets to use those spaces before they do, temporarily, while we do some of the work in reallocating the transaction counter in that whole area for staff, the reorganization of the existing building. So that'll pay dividends, and then they'll shift back, and then the police will take over their final facility then in December, as we've noted. So that's kind of the overall schedule. It's pretty much what we had said from the start. I think we're pretty much on task with that. I'm sure the approval agency for this project will work very cooperatively to help us achieve those schedules. I wonder who that is. Okay, sorry. So that's the schedule, the budget, and obviously the scope of the work for the project. Good, all right. So, all right.
So
So, Mayor?
questions, comments, input.
We're pretty much staying on target, so I think,
We've been getting together every 2 weeks, we've been working. And if you have any assistance you'd like to offer at this point, we'd be eager to hear it and incorporate it.
moving right along. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
Ron Scholler?
I'm President of the Council.
Excuse me?
I'm gonna pass.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Brandemir? You have to, you pass too? Mario Spagnoletti?
Mario Spagnoletti, 351 Sumner Avenue. Briefly, I just want to comment on our recycling event we had. The EAC, and I got to thank Mayor Harrico, really put a good effort into this thing. Public Works Commissioner Phil Jinder, he used his own truck, and he helped out a lot. Justin Bundle, the biology teacher, he had his group out, and they did a wonderful job on it. So I just want to say, since we started this thing about maybe 25 years ago, we had a contest for the kids to bring magazines, newspapers, and then they all got a prize and all. I never thought it would come to this point that we have a recycling electronic that came to this point. We had cars backed up on MacArthur Road, 2 lines coming in to do this. So it makes me feel good to see the effort that people are putting into this recycling. Thank you.
Thank you, Mario.
Thanks, Mario. Thanks for all your work, too.
Is it Zainer Ranho, WFMZ. No, okay. Kim Hill. No, I'll pass. Len Hoban.
Good evening, thanks for this opportunity. I just want to,
Your name and address for the.
my name's Len Hoban, 5218 Pennsylvania Street, Whitehall. United States Air Force veteran, Vietnam War, and I just want to express my just unbelievable that one of our representatives made the statement he did, referring to veterans as what they were. And, you know, I learned a long time ago, consequences come with things you say, and there should be consequences for that, and people should be held accountable. If this is what I'm expecting of my leaders, to think of a veteran like that, I'm really disgusted. That's all.
Brent Fenstermaker.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Name and address. Oh, I'm sorry.
Brent Fenstermaker, 3926 Mechanics Road, Whitehall, PA. Just to kind of tag off with Mr. Hoban said, I am a retired veteran, 28 years, Army, 4 combat tours, over a year and a half of that was spent in combat. I am the incoming commander for the Egypt VFW. There are 3 veterans associations in the townships, 2 American Legions, 1 VFW. I have over 700 members, active service members in my VFW, and probably another 400 or 500 social members. Those members are looking towards me to explain to them why we do not have the support, a veterans community does not have the support of our administrators. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the comment, but recently one of your board members made a comment comparing veterans to that of terrorists. And as a 28-year man of the service, that is my life. I identify as that. And that comment is unacceptable in my eyes. Now I have to answer to my servicemen and women why. So I just wanted to bring this up that, you know, that individual really has lost my respect and my support, and I feel he needs to make amends for his comments. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, it's the end of the courtesy of floor. We'll move to public hearing and voting on ordinances. Bill number 32-2019, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the purchase of a 2020 Ford Explorer 4x4 Interceptor for the Police Administration Division in accordance with Section 3.20 in the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
Commissioner Fryman?
Yes.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Swaniker, aye. Commissioner Clary?
Aye.
Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
President Howard?
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 33-2019, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the installation of a stainless steel dump body on the new 2019 Mack dump truck for the Public Works Bureau of the Township of Whitehall in accordance with Section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Clary?
Aye.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
and President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 34-2019, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for purchase of a TruNarc field-based analyzer for the police department in accordance with section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll make,
Second?
I'll second.
Questions, comments from the board? Questions or comments from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
An ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the inspections of stormwater facilities for the Development Bureau of the Township of Whitehall, RFP 2019-14, in accordance with section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second it.
Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 36-2019, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the replacement of the Leonard Road barn roof for the Recreation Bureau of the Township of Whitehall, bid 2019-09, in accordance with section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments from the board? Questions or comments from the floor? Yes, sir.
Mario Spangler at 8351 Sumner Avenue. Was it established what type of roof they're gonna put on there? What is it, metal or?
No, it'll be a shingled roof, but architectural type, I mean, the shingles that are currently used by and approved by the housing authorities in, Allentown and Bethlehem for historic
Historic.
purposes.
Okay, thank you.
So they will look pretty good.
It'll have a slate look.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Ginder, Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 37-2019, an ordinance authorizing the acceptance of a proposal for the replacement of the West Catasauqua Playground Community Building roof for the Recreation Bureau of the Township of Whitehall, bid number 2019-08, in accordance with section 3.20 of the Home Rule Charter, which requires authorization of acquisitions in excess of $25,000 by ordinance. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Comments or questions from the board? Comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bill number 38-2019, an ordinance amending and ratifying charges to be added to the amount collected as part of unpaid real estate taxes and municipal claims for delinquent accounts. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions from the board? Questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniger, aye. Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Bill passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Bless you.
Resolution number 3068, a resolution for sewage facilities plan revision for new land development of BTPA QRS 12-25, wow, Inc., MRP Industrial, who is that?
You didn't say slash.
Oh, I'm sorry, / MRP Industrial, located at 3585. You want to read this?
No, I did
Sorry.
Monday.
Are you-
Last week I had.
Hey, listen, your only daughter only graduates once, right? Sorry. All right, thanks. Located at 3585 South Church Street, Whitehall, PA, index number 1930-19. And she didn't trip across the stage, thank God, right? Yeah, she's. Comments or questions? I'm sorry, do I have a motion first? Do you want to make that motion?
I'll make it.
See, Phil's going to make that motion. Thanks, Phil. Second?
I'll second.
Comments or questions from the board? Comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please pull the board.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniger, aye. Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
President Hauer.
Yes.
Resolution passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Resolution number 3069, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a sidewalk maintenance agreement with the PennDOT for the Cementon Bridge and to execute the application on behalf of Whitehall Township. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments from the board?
Yes. Where are we? Did PennDOT agree to any of the redactions?
And we have reviewed the agreement itself, and we are comfortable that any type of structural changes that are gonna be made would require them to make most of the changes, and the cost would be on PennDOT, based on the review of the agreement.
Even the ADA upgrades? If,
Because most of the work they're gonna be doing is structural, we believe that that ultimately will put the costs on them the way the agreement is written. Now, we can't obviously make any guarantees based on the language, but they're not willing to change it, so.
You used the word most. Now, what do you perceive as possible things that we would have them?
If there's certain parts of the bridge that would not be considered structural, basically the paving, anything along the exterior of the bridge, all of that is considered structural, but some things that might be the connector pieces could be considered to be non-structural.
Sarah was very clear.
Clear as mud, yeah, to me. I mean, it can be anything except the structure. And this is what it is, though, we're doing the structure.
What do we ever do that's not clear as mud?
No, and again, I'm not
it's not-
putting the onus on you or them, it's just sort of,
Well, I mean, unfortunately, we've come to a point in the negotiations where they're saying take it or leave it. And I can't make any assurances beyond what's in contractual language.
After the review with representatives of PennDOT, Sarah, as you know, had concerns at our meeting last week. Her position is that the clarification which she has gotten from PennDOT will mitigate, if not eliminate, any of the concerns that we had, and therefore she has recommended that the existing language is adequate to protect our interests.
so let's just say we didn't accept it. I've had citizens that called me and said, well, does that mean they won't put sidewalks in? I said, I don't think they're gonna re-engineer the bridge. But if we didn't accept this, what would that mean?
Essentially, there is no contract between you and PennDOT, and that would leave open the opportunity for basically them to walk away.
From the bridge?
Not from the bridge, but from any upgrades.
I received a call from representatives from the county who were concerned exactly as to what your concern would be, that they may decide not to do the sidewalk. Sarah believes that at this point, that we have adequate enough assurance that we are not going to be stuck holding the bag down the road. So my position would be either we gamble and win the battle in a test of wills here, or accept her position that we have adequate safeguards to avert a potential disaster of us not having that there. We don't have curb cuts, as I understand it, scheduled along the end of that bridge, particularly on the west side. Well, we do on the east side, but frankly, that's in Northampton's world. So at this point, it makes sense for me to feel comfortable with what she has told me is her position in this.
We fought very hard to get a 10-foot wide multimodal sidewalk on that bridge. It was proposed at maybe 4 feet, and the current situation is when there's a pedestrian coming across and a person on a bike, it's not possible. And given the traffic on the D&L trail, I thought that was something that we had to, as a township, push for. They did a study and they approved that. From what I recall from the plans, the ADA cuts that were there were for the crossing for the D&L trail. And then there's an ADA cut that they're replacing up by the Red Barn as you head towards 2nd Street. So it's limited in scope. And if there would ever be a path underneath the bridge for the trail, that would change. That's a different animal.
During the conversations, as Jeff pointed out, we've been to a number of meetings with PennDOT. They've included a lot of what we had hoped they would include in the project, one of which was pavilions and parking area for the trail. They've included in here without cost to anybody other than PennDOT. They've also included a shelf underneath to bring the trail underneath. They've accommodated the county and the township in many of these concerns that we had, but that's not relevant to the sidewalk agreement. As a standalone agreement, again, I would say Sarah has recommended that we have adequate control within the agreement.
And unfortunately, like I said, they're not gonna change the language at this point, so.
My concern is this, I mean, if there is an upgrade that needs to be done, it's gonna be done for the safety of our residents. And if there's a cost to it, there's a cost to it. I mean, to me, I want our residents to be saved, especially our members that are handicapped in this community and have enough obstacles to get to where they need to go. If we have to do something on their behalf, then so be it.
One
That's
other
just my
thing
take.
I might point out, if there is concern, in the past we have, and again, we have reinstated a request to use CDBG money to do ADA compliant crosswalks. We have an indication that we will receive that grant, and my presumption is that in the future, should we need to do ADA compliant curb cuts, we would be able to include that in any future CDBG ask.
Okay. Any other comments, questions from the board? Comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Marks?
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Warren?
Aye.
Commissioner Fryman?
Yes.
Commissioner Clary?
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder?
Yes.
President Hauer?
Yes.
Resolution passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Moving on to motions to approve the appointment of Thomas Waters to serve on the Whitehall Township Recreation Commission Community at Large, term expiring December 31st, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Comments or questions from the board? Comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye, and President Hauer.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
Motion to approve the appointment of John Hudak III to serve on the Whitehall Township Planning Commission, term expiring December 31st, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I make the motion.
I have a second.
I'll second.
Comments or questions from the board?
Thank you for stepping up and doing this.
Any other comments or questions? Comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, Mr. Secretary, please poll the board.
Commissioner Fryman,
Yes.
Commissioner Sloniker, aye. Commissioner Clary,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginder,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Yes.
and President Hauer.
Yes.
Motion passes 7 ayes, 0 nays.
We need more beards in this township. Thank you for stepping up, sir. Sorry. Let's make a-
quorum.
What's that? Yeah, we have a quorum. We're gonna start the Bearded Men's Caucus. Discussion item, the freight study.
Lee,
She doesn't seem like she was ready for this, but she'll wing it.
she's been ready for
I'm not really ready. Not 100% sure what you want us to discuss here.
hit the last meeting in the conversation.
Well, obviously freight is a big issue in the Lehigh Valley right now. Whitehall Township is affected by this freight movement, not necessarily because of what we have developing in the township, but because we have major corridors in the township that will be significantly impacted by the freight movement. Through the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study, PennDOT hired a consultant to do a specific study for what they call the airport area with respect to the warehouse development that is occurring in that area. We were invited to sit down at the table with many other communities that were affected. Most of the other communities are experiencing different issues because they are the ones that are experiencing the developments that are occurring. They have had several meetings over the past couple of years. They have a draft study that will be released in the next few weeks that Michael Baker and Associates, who is PennDOT's consultant for this study, will be releasing for the public. It's not public at this time, but we have been a part of the committee from the beginning. We've provided comments on what we feel are issues that will affect Whitehall. Fortunately or unfortunately, how you look at it, not only do we generate truck traffic, we receive truck traffic, so it would be kind of two-faced to say, yeah, we don't want the trucks here. A lot of our businesses live for these deliveries. However, having said that, we do have some major corridors that will be significantly adversely impacted by what they are proposing as truck routes. So we are trying to be at the forefront of bringing up our concerns with respect to what this will do to our community, with the understanding that these are state routes and you have a limited amount of influence over what the state will do. One of the most important things I think that was discussed as part of this that affects us not only is the traffic, but the truck parking issue, which we've experienced incredible increases in truck parking, and I expect that will only increase as time goes on. They kind of were very cautious. The study is not public yet, so they really didn't want it disclosed until they were ready to have it public. And as a board, when you come up with studies and documents, while they're still in draft version, it's very difficult to disclose that in their entirety to the public because you can't get a whole document together with everybody deciding how it's going to go. They're trying to get it together. They will be releasing it, I believe, in the next probably 2 or 3 months. But just to let you know that we were a part of this study. It was a good effort. It was nice that PennDOT actually invited us to sit down, which they don't always do. It is something that we're all going to have to be aware of, and we're going to have to plan for in the future. We're going to have to be aware of with land development plans. We're going to have to be aware with how we program dollars, our own dollars with respect to things like what Mike had just mentioned, accessibility, you know, just improvements along traffic routes. You know, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. The Lehigh Valley is booming with this warehouse development. It's not going to stop just because of our prime location, you know, with the New York and New Jersey port. We're kind of on the periphery of it. We have one warehouse project in the township. We have it all here. You say it, we got at least one of it here. But I think that as a township, I'd like to just point out that you should be very proud that we are always at the forefront. We have traffic impact fees here in Whitehall Township. We have had them since 1993. Well, 92, 93, they went into effect. If a lot of these other communities, not bad-mouthing them because they didn't anticipate, I think, this development either, but if they would have had the same foresight and spent the money like we did to implement traffic impact fees, they would have gotten a lot more for their investment, for their dollars from the developers with improvements, where now they're kind of sitting there saying, how are we going to fix this? So kudos to Whitehall for doing that. But that's where we're at. As the study comes out, then and the mayor had submitted a comment letter, an official comment letter on the draft study, but, you know, we will forward all of that to you.
And actually, one of the people, two of the people, three of the people sitting in this room, Lee, Frank, and Jack, have been responsible for the movement for us to collect those impact fees that have led us to be able to spend money beyond what's allocated by PennDOT. They have moved forward relative to the rest of the Lehigh Valley very, very, I guess I want to say they've done a better job of preparing for the future than a lot of residential communities and municipalities have. If it weren't for the efforts that they've undertaken in the past few years, 20 years, 25 at this point.
Stop. It seems like a couple years.
No, listen, you guys do this without really getting a pat on the back a lot of times. And if it weren't for the work that you had done, we would be in a much more precarious position. As she pointed out, we have warehousing in the community, and we have provided for the type of development, every type of development within this community. And as a result, we're not subject to the type of attacks that some municipalities are right now. This freight study is a response to the growth of warehousing particularly, but the general growth of truck traffic flowing through this community. And MacArthur Road is an important component of this study, as is 329. So we've been represented through this entire process over the past few years as it's developed, and we've had input.
Phil was there too. He was on the traffic, like it or not.
One of the finest committees of my whole life.
It was fun. It is fun. It's a great committee that you have. Is that good?
Yep, thank you. We'll move on to reports of public officials. We'll start with the Board of Commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Warren.
Okay, you know, I do have something to say. Just a little background. My father, he was a World War II vet, drafted out of high school. He went on in life to be commander of the American Legion. He was active in the AMVETS. He was vice commander of the VFW at one point, helping their facility get going. He was chair of the flag committee, and as a child, I would be one of the kids running the cemetery, putting out flags. And from that day, seeing my father in action helping others instilled a sense of service in me. And later in life, he would go to the VA Lebanon. Before the shuttle van, he was the shuttle. His comrades would schedule their appointments around his, and when he didn't have to go, he would take them, and I would go with. And if you've ever been to the VA Lebanon, it always meant a trip at the Heisey's Diner on the way back, and I really got to see what sacrifice is when I was there. Myself, I'm a contractor. I do geophysical surveys. I work around EOD guys a lot. I see their camaraderie. Last project I worked on was a mustard agent cleanup site. So on that day, when I made those comments, it was a remark. It wasn't a quip. It wasn't anything that wasn't meaningful, but it was hurtful. I immediately knew it was wrong. I apologized then. I was contrite the following day. And I apologized at the first opportunity I could. Was my belief that bringing it up on the holiday weekend wasn't the time to do it. It was taking away from the sacrifices others, and so I wanted to have that focus. So last Monday at the public meeting was my first opportunity to speak in front of everybody and be contrite. I do give disabled American veterans a Purple Heart. Catholic Charities, which supports homeless veterans. And I've come to learn that the account for the homeless veterans, Catholic Charities, is dried up, and they don't get renewed funding until October. So right now, I am paying with my heart. I can assure you going forward, I will think about giving more. And serving our vets, I was involved with the Memorial Committee. I used my talents to take the ideas of the committee to create the marketing materials and the schematic, the draft design that you see of what it's supposed to look like. Looks amazingly similar to what it was. I don't want to put that emphasis on me, but I've supported veterans before I was a public official. And I assure you, veterans weigh heavy on my heart. And it was a stupid comment. And I hope to learn from it, and I hope over time you'll forgive me. Thank you.
Commissioner Clary?
Just two things. One, I just want to applaud the two gentlemen that we approved tonight, Tom and John. Thank you for stepping up, and hopefully, and I invite others in the community to do some. Plenty of work to be done. More importantly, though, I attended the Memorial Day ceremonies. I think it's imperative, like as great as they are, I think we do need a sound system. And I know we've made that comment last year, but I think we absolutely, even if I have to bring a speaker from home, it's a must. It's really, really hard to hear anything on that day. So I think that's an absolute must that we take care of that for future events. Thanks.
Yeah, once again, I'd like to bring up, we started out the meeting with remembrance of Mr. Spates. I worked here for a short period of time as the treasurer, and you'd be somebody that you'd be gone in the morning, come back late in the afternoon, and, he seemed to me like all business, and he seemed like a really, really a dedicated worker. And yesterday, I want to bring up, we had a former commissioner that was honored, Claire Huntsberger, down at Fullerton Memorial Park. They dedicated a building in his name, and he was somebody that, while I always didn't agree with him, I certainly respected the fact that how much the township meant to him. And it was a small gesture, but I think for the park to do, but it was something that hit me home, so that's all.
Mr. Ginder?
Tom mentioned about the dedication yesterday, and I too, I felt that was definitely deserved by Claire. He worked hard many, many years down there to do what had to be done. I just have a really short comment I'd like to make on this. Tonight we heard during public comment remarks from two veterans. And they were good comments and well taken, and thank you. However, the disabled, the handicapped, and the deceased veterans who have given the most of anybody, who can ever apologize to them for comparing them to a terrorist? Currently at this time, and please think about this, and think about this every day. Currently at this time, young men and women from this community and from all over this country, they're currently serving in harm's way. at godforsaken places from one end of this world to the other, trying to get through their day, trying to do the honorable things, and yes, putting it all right out there, like many of us never even could imagine. Think about them, think about their safety, and be thankful for them. Be awful thankful for what they're doing for us. That's the only comment I should make.
Thank you. Commissioner Fryman?
Just two things, hinging upon the previous comments about Claire Hunsberger's dedication for the field house. I think the people that were responsible for that, they did a fantastic job, and I think they really did him justice, because that man was very proud of Fullerton, and it was awesome to be a part of that yesterday. And one other reminder that with the conclusion of the Fullerton Fair, the Cement Bell Fair will be coming up at the end of June, the 24th to the 29th. There's nightly entertainment and everything like that, and last night, Saturday, would be the fireworks. So the fire department of Cement and the Playground Association up there in Cement do a lot of hard work to get this to be a successful public event every year. So please feel free to come out and support the two local departments.
Thank you. Commissioner Marks?
I only have one thing. Former Commissioner Dutt reached out to me. They are having a fundraiser for the Whitehall Active Community Center Incorporated at the Keystone Pub and Grill on Grape Street on July 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. And all proceeds are going to go to the senior center. So he asked me to get that out. That's all I have.
What was the date again, Joe?
July 8th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Keystone Pub on Grape Street.
Thank you.
Not to beat this drum anymore, I've been contacted by a couple of our local media to give a comment on the issue at hand with the comments that were made at the polling station. And I refuse to make those comments, only, and no offense to the media, but we sometimes make comments to the media and what we say is this long and what gets printed in the paper is this long. So I wanted to make my comments clear and recorded and video recorded so everyone can hear them. I did not serve, but my father did. And I have the utmost respect for everyone that has served in the military. When I think back about his life and everything that he stood for, and trust me, he put the discipline into me that he got from the military, I will say that. And I deserved it. I think back about him and like what he went through and the struggles he went through. This is very emotional for me. But Brent, first of all, congratulations on your new post, and I know you're going to do an amazing job there. I've known Brent since middle school, maybe? Long, long time. And your comment about this administration being okay with those comments is, I just want you and every one of our veterans in this community to know that those comments do not reflect anyone on this board, and especially me. And when I heard about him, I was very upset. And I realized that this is the shitty part of politics. Sometimes we say dumb things in races, and for whatever reason, dumb things come out of people's mouths. But that is up to Commissioner Warren to make amends for. And I know, hearing him over the last couple months, and he has called me over this issue, I know it's not in his heart, but sometimes we say dumb things. I've said plenty of dumb things in my life. I will not get into those now. But I just want everyone to know, and I want, everyone here and the veterans here, that I am so thankful for your service, because I know what it's like to see what our veterans go through. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for everything you do. And if you ever wonder if you have the support of this board, don't ever wonder that. You will always have our support, always. And we will do whatever we have to do for you. Good luck to you, Brent. That's all I got. Mayor?
And I guess I have to respond to, I don't know if you intended to include the administration here, Brent, but I can assure you that we have the utmost support for and honor for our veterans. So I hope there's no presumption that we do anything other than honor you. That's our goal, and we strive consistently to make sure that you understand that. Moving on. We talked about recycling, Mario, and as you suggested, we are evaluating whether we move on to twice a year recycling. That's something we're still evaluating, and I think it may make sense, and it may solve the problem of the backups that we get. I think we've corrected some of the flow problems that we've had, and I think doing what we did in the second two-thirds of that day made a difference in clearing up the problem. So I think we're on our way there. And I want to thank you and everybody who was there. It was a really good event. And everybody chipped in to do their job. I would point out to Mr. Hudak that he jumped in an attempt to help the Egypt Park raise funding this year. He was willing to walk around with his shirt off during the day, asking for donations. And I would just request that you not do that during any of the meetings of the Planning Commission.
Youth is a wonderful thing, isn't it? We continue to move forward with the dairy. We've met once again with PennDOT. We met actually today with a member of the Governor's Action Group, working toward a goal of getting them some additional funding and assistance. We still see a September closing as a deadline, not a possibility. Yesterday, I was honored, having served as the executive when Claire was in office, to be able to say some good things about him. He began serving the community in Fullerton shortly after he got out of the service, but in 1955, he was one of the people who began that memorial playground down there. And he spent an awful lot of his time there and an awful lot of time sitting here. And he deserved every bit of the kudos that have been given to him by putting his name on that building. I would also say that the comments that have been made honoring our veterans, honoring our people who have served are well-deserved. And I have also received comments from many veterans who have been willing to extend their support for the right of everybody to make foolish or otherwise comments, and to presume that people can look a little bit closer into the hearts of those who make mistakes in an attempt to find a way to presume that it was a mistake. If we look into people's hearts, perhaps we could see more effectively what they intend. I can't do that very well, except to look at the life of people who have potentially made those silly comments, bad comments, awful comments. And many of those people that I know who have, as have I, have grown to learn from them. And I hope we can all seek it in our hearts to do the hard work of looking intently before we throw somebody away. That's about it for me. There's no treasurer's report. We are going to have a quick executive session over a legal matter, but I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention.
It's already adjourned.
I know. We have received a basically $70,000 grant for the construction of a pavilion up at the Parkway. We're in the process of putting together a grant application for another $90,000+, and we think we have a good shot at that. We're working hard to get this thing done without any money coming out of our pockets.
Awesome.
I'd run it by the.
Yes, yes, yes.